Professor Gerald Horne. Welcome, sir. I'd also extend a special welcome to our guest speaker, our special guest speaker. I have to put in the special there, Mr. Pierre Labossiere. Okay, so
Thank
welcome
you.
you all. I
Thank you.
also want to welcome all our presenters and all the participants who are joining us on Zoom, as well as those who are here at the Blue Edition. Okay, so we look forward to this evening's event. And with no further ado, I hand you over to Mr. Akumututa, our moderator for this evening's event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Gibbon, and thanks again to our our guest speakers, Professor Gerald Horne, one of my favorite personalities, and also Horne Pierre Labossiere of Haiti. We are very thankful that they both have accepted our invitation to participate in this event. I also want to thank the participants who are here. I see my good comrade from Guyana, Brother Nigel Westmas is here. Good to see you, brother, that you are present.
Thank you.
And also the other persons who have agreed to be part of this event this evening, namely Brother Jomo Sanga Thomas from St. Vincent, James Finesse from Bonaire, and also Brother Mussington from Barbuda. We have invited these persons to share solidarity messages. Because while we will be discussing Haiti and the crisis in Haiti, the Caribbean faces a number of other crises. In fact, we have health crises, we have crises of colonialism, and this is why people like brother from Bonaire, Brother Finesse is here. In fact, many of us are not aware that the people of Bonaire, for example, are facing a very dire situation in which the Dutch government is trying to displace them from their lands by bringing Dutch people from Holland, from the Netherlands, to increase the population and to dilute the power of the indigenous. We also have a situation in Barbuda, in which after the storm, the government of Gaston decided that the people of Barbuda had no rights. And so in collaboration with some people in the US, including people like Robert De Niro, there is now a plan to totally remove the people from Barbuda from their ancestral lands, which they have occupied for hundreds of years. We also have a situation in the Caribbean where the issue of Haitian refugees being abused by governments in the Caribbean. And the interesting thing is that I returned to Trinidad after, 5 years. And in every single corner of Trinidad, you can see Venezuelan immigrants in the most rural parts of there. And no one seemed to have a problem with the Venezuelan. Yet, when Haitians come, there seemed to be a problem. So I remembered some years ago, a particular government, I think it was the now government, tried to have Haitian immigrants visit Trinidad. And the PNM, which was then in opposition, I remember the late Patrick Manning making a speech telling the population of Trinidad and Tobago that the government cannot take care of its own citizens. Why should we have Haitian immigrants in our country? And despite that comment and criticism, there were immigrants from Lebanon and other parts of the world who were being allowed into Trinidad. There is a serious situation with the anti-Haitian and an anti-African element that is driving some of these things. So we have invited these people, the brothers and sisters from different parts of the Caribbean, to participate, to share their struggles, and also to bring solidarity messages from these particular territories so that we can understand what is happening. For example, right now in Martinique, there are protests in Martinique, significant protests, and I understand also in Guadeloupe. But because of the language barriers, because of a media, corporate media that does not serve the interests of the Caribbean people, we can hear about a mole on Prince Charles or King Charles' face, or what other celebrity may have had a colonoscopy, but we don't know what is happening in the Caribbean. And so it is important that we engage in activities like this. In fact, I am sitting here in Tunapuna, and Tunapuna is a very historic place. Right up the road from where I'm sitting is the birthplace of CLR James and also his burial site. Not too far down the road in Aruca is the birthplace of George Padmore and Henry Sylvester Williams. And not too far from me also is the birthplace of Lloyd Best, famous economist. So this area in where we are here in Trinidad at the moment is a place filled with meaning and history. And so we are very happy to be in this spot. And I cited James because so many times things happen and we don't know. And I remember Rafik Shah, those in Trinidad may remember him as one of the leaders of the mutiny of 1970 in the army, when the government asked the army to fire the people and the soldiers mutiny. And CLR and Rafik Shah was sharing an experience he had with CLR James in Trinidad when CLR James was living in Trinidad. And he was at the OWTU, the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. And CLR called him after hearing our conversation to listen to this conversation. Two comrades were arguing, and one was stating the other one was reactionary, and they went back and forth. And so CLR said, Rafik, I want you to listen to this. And he listened to the conversation. And CLR remarked, the comrade is not reactionary, he's stationary, he's doing nothing. And too many times we are stationary, we do nothing. And I refer particularly to some of these people in the Caribbean who call themselves Pan-Africanists and reparationists, who the only thing they seem to want to do is to run to Ghana and send me pictures of malls in Ghana as if I need to see a mall in Ghana. And so this is part of our condition in the Caribbean. So we have to do something. And this is what we are doing this evening. In fact, Sierra also referred to George Padmore in one of the books that was just published. He referred to what he called the Padmore principle. And he said, whenever there was anything in any part of the world, Padmore would call a meeting of 3 or 4 comrades and issue a communique. And he said, we always must do something when something is happening. And so this is what we are doing today. There is an event, there is a struggle taking place in Haiti. There are all kinds of issues in Haiti, and we are hearing nothing from the so-called popular media. So today, this is our way of fulfilling the legacy of both CLR James and George Padmore by doing something. Without further comment, I would like to call on one of our young activists here from the community and the country, Ms. Denisa David, to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Pierre Labossiere. Ms. David.
Good evening. Pierre Labossiere has dedicated his adult life to advocating for working poor in Haiti. His primary work has been to support the grassroots Lavalas movement in Haiti. He is the co-founder and leader of the Haiti Action Committee, which has worked for almost 20 years to bring dignity to and improve the lives of most Haitians. Through the Haiti Action Committee, Labossiere has championed grassroots efforts to improve education, bring about social justice, and develop a stable democracy for the people of his native country. He fights military repression and supports grassroots activists and political prisoners in every way he can. He has been a union activist and a supporter of the people's struggle for justice and dignity worldwide.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
All righty. Thank you very much and welcome everyone. Thank you once again, ACO and the organizers of this event. This is great for us to have to continue the dialogue and take action. What Haiti, and I'm glad that you pointed that out, what's going on in terms of Haitians being rejected almost in every country that they are going to. We are seeing where they are seeking refuge. We've seen that, as you mentioned, this is happening in Trinidad. I have to call somebody who's been leading a tremendous struggle in Jamaica, and that's attorney Malini Aline. She's been really in the forefront of this struggle in solidarity with the Haitian refugees as an attorney. Also, our sister from Guyana, Charlene Wilkinson. And we have Sister Yaya Noreen Coleman in Belize, among others. I don't want to leave anybody out, but these three people I wanted to call them out because of the leading work they've been doing, and I've been in touch with them on that. The Haitians who are fleeing a system that has been outrageously deadly against the people of Haiti. And when you mentioned earlier, Ako, how people in Bonaire, I believe the Dutch government is bringing immigrants from the Netherlands to displace the population. I was reading a statement made by an unidentified member of the Haitian elite, and I assume, and I put elite in quotation, and I'm sure that that person doesn't see himself. He was a man by the sound of his voice and the pronouns he used. He was a man, and he claimed to be a descendant of the French. So he claimed that he was stating that it was high time that they get rid of the Africans, that they get rid of the majority Black population, because the land belongs to the French. And that statement was issued in December 2016, in the wake of the elections that had taken place, in which the UN fraudulently imposed Jovenel Moïse, the late president who was assassinated, and imposed him as president of the country. People were in the streets protesting. And so his warning to the population was that, one, they control the economy of the country. They are the ones who have the levers of economic power, that they will use that economic power to start a war against the majority population. And here I'm paraphrasing, but I have the letter, I have the statement, which I translated in English. He made it in Creole, and it was a call to arms to members of the oligarchy in Haiti. He stated that those of them who have gone to school, we can buy a lot of them with our money and have them in the media to tell lies and to say things that will be beneficial to us because we have money, and with our money, we can buy them to spread disinformation. Others, we will put guns in their hands so that they can attack their sisters and brothers, so that they can attack the others. And so when they attack them, they will make it such a hell that Haitians will flee Haiti, or they will be killed. And the ones who stayed, will encourage immigration, meaning of white folks to come there, and we will whitenize the country. And that's me paraphrasing what he meant. And he used the Dominican Republic as an example of how to whiten the population, make it less Black. And he had very strong words in identifying the people of Haiti, the majority Black population, as Lavalas supporters, as Aristide supporters, and called us dirty Blacks and inferior. And so I'm laying it out to say that this is part what we are seeing today. And at that time, we were not seeing that as much, the violence as much as it was happening. But this was an announcement of what we are seeing today. And this is increasing. A number of people have been saying and have been presenting this man, Jimmy Cherizier, Barbecue, and a number of these death squads in Haiti that they refer, that the media refers to as gangs. But the gang is a misnomer because it implies as if these are outer elements in the society. And you may have heard me say that, but I have to keep repeating it because what the corporate media does is put that kind of information out to the public as a way to hammer it in people's subconscious. And so we have to counter it by repeating the same thing. These are not gangs, these are paramilitary death squads. And their job is to terrorize the population, terrorize the workers who are standing up for better wages, better working conditions, because the starvation wages that they are getting, the lack of enforcement of the labor codes is a danger to their lives, and people cannot live with the miserly salary that they are getting with those starvation wages. With the gangs there and the death squads, people cannot mobilize as they used to. Basically, when we had the Haitian military, a military that was created during the US occupation of 1915 to 1934, the US had gotten rid, had eliminated the Haitian army, the old army that gave us independence, and created a new military to do the bidding of the US, of US enterprises, of the US imposed status quo. And so that was what the military was doing. When the people's movement rose up and overthrew Baby Doc Duvalier and overthrew the military and the Tonton Macoute system that was in place, President Aristide, when he came back from exile, from the coup that the military had conducted, he agreed with the Haitian people and decided to disband the Haitian military. And the military was disbanded. The money, the 40% of the national budget that used to go to them was saved and put and invested in building schools, hospitals, clean sources of drinking water, was invested in rebuilding the agricultural economy of the country that was devastated by decades of US and IMF and World Bank imposed conditions against the people of Haiti. So that Haiti used to be a country that provided its own, was self-sufficient in rice production, in a number of staples, eggs and what have you, livestock, poultry. We had a thriving industry. And I know that because my parents also, growing up as a kid in Haiti, I used to see them buying eggs that were locally produced by the farmers because they had a bakery. And they used to buy large quantity of eggs, fresh eggs every morning. Now, all of these have been wiped out. All the eggs are imported into Haiti. It's been a destruction, systematic destruction of our economy. And that was a well-planned effort, a well-planned strategy to force the population that before used to be self-sufficient in terms of agricultural production, feeding themselves, having their own lands, working for themselves, to force them into the cities now that they no longer had lands, because the food, the imported foods were flooding the Haitian market at cheaper rates coming from the US, subsidized agriculture from the US, flooding the Haitian market. And by the way, former President Bill Clinton made an apology, public apology, to say that he did that particularly for the rice production so that it could benefit farmers in Arkansas, in his own home state of Arkansas. But yet it was not a sincere apology, because right now, to this day, he's continuing those very same policies that the US is continuing to impose on the people of Haiti. And so for me, Lavalas, under the leadership of President Aristide, was investing in rebuilding the agricultural economy, something that the US wasn't pleased with at all. And that was the program that the people had presented to President Aristide, to the family Lavalas party, and had entrusted them and had charged them with implementing this program. And this program was being implemented. And Haiti was seeing the beginning of a change in Haiti. Haiti was on its way. We were not there yet, but we were on our way. And so that's when the coup of 2004 took place. Back then, the military, as I stated earlier, was disbanded. So in order to carry out the coup, the US invested in a group of former Haitian military officers who were part of the disbanded military. Some of them, like people like Guy Philippe, were trained at the campus, like another campus of the School of the Americas, located in Ecuador. He was trained there. Then he was brought back into the new Haitian National Police. He became a commander in the police, but he was working with a lot of the drug cartels as their enforcer. So you see, and he wasn't the only one. There was quite a group of them who had received that training, came back to Haiti, were put in leadership roles for the police, and started corrupting the police and turning the police into an instrument of corruption. Very involved in not only narco trafficking, but also involved in prostitution, all kinds of things that you could imagine, including kidnappings. And this is from Norluc d'Orange, who's a Haitian investigative reporter who had done a lot of work about this and who knew Guy Philippe. He discussed that a lot. So these people were weaponized, instrumented in creating some of the gangs or the paramilitary death squads. They were receiving training in the Dominican Republic, receiving weapons from the US and training within Dominican military bases. I know that Professor Horne is going to be speaking about the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And since we share the same island, our histories are very intertwined. And the role that they have played there in the destabilization of Haiti that we are seeing today is just tremendous. They are everywhere. And I want to make the distinction clear. It's not the Dominican people. It is the elite of the Dominican Republic through governments that act in a fascist way, that are imposing, that are creating and participating with the US, France, and Canada, to name those three leaders of what's going on in Haiti, to destabilize the country of Haiti. So Guy Philippe, operating from the DR, was the Haitian face of the terror campaign that gang raped women and did all of the destroying people's crops, carried out a lot of assassinations. But still, they couldn't defeat the population. And so the US, France, and Canada came and kidnapped President Aristide in the 2004 coup d'etat that took place. It was in February 29th, 2004. And so fast forwarding, since that time, for the last 20 plus years, we have had Haiti has been under occupation by the United Nations, a front of the United Nations fronting the occupation. The original action, the kidnapping of President Aristide, took place, as I mentioned, by special forces from the US, France, and Canada. And later on, to its shame, Brazil, under Lula, headed the troops that were coming, that headed the United Nations multinational force. They were very brutal, and they worked very closely with what we call gangs, with what is being referred to as gangs. But again, paramilitary death squads that were killing our people using machetes. One of them was called the Little Machete Army, and they have all kinds of names. So what we are seeing today is a continuation of decades of a tactic that's decades old in terms of terrorizing the population to stop the people's movement from achieving its objective. What are the objectives? Being able to have free and fair elections, being able to vote, freely in democratic elections, to pick out, to select leaders from their communities, people, and implement their own program, being able to have demand that the government use their tax money to invest in local agriculture, to invest in building schools, hospitals, clean sources of drinking water, having a voice, having a justice system that works for the people, having their children being taught by competent individuals, competent teachers who would be receiving a salary. Right now, some teachers are owed months in back pay and don't get the money. So you see, these are all the factors that are the push factors driving what we are seeing today as a mass exodus of our people out of Haiti. And people are fighting back, people are standing strong, but the level of the violence against the women of Haiti is tremendous. Gang rape taking place of women, where rape is actually used as a weapon of terror. You see, a friend sent me a photo of an older woman, an elderly person, someone in her 60s, and told me that she was, and he blurred the image, but he said this woman last week was gang raped by quite a number of those people who actually burned down her home. And you see, there can be no logic to this other than sheer terror. People being burned alive. Yet at the same time, we have people who call themselves leftists, who had beautiful things about what's going on in Palestine, but yet in Haiti, they are claiming that the perpetrators of these horrible, atrocious actions are revolutionaries. And they are trying to convince the world, again, because, as Ako said, because our people speak Creole. They have no access to the media. The only media that they have access to is Radio Timoun, a radio station out of the Aristide Foundation for Democracy, which broadcasts in Creole. But in the English language, no. The others do. They have international contacts, and they are financed, not only by the UN, by the US Embassy and others. I'm going to stop in a minute, but I want to tell you, one of the biggest scandals that came out in Haiti this week, in addition to the killings, the massacres that took place, Ponsonde is a community where many of the farmers sell their produce. It's a big marketplace of the farmers, and in Haiti. And there was a massacre about a week ago in Ponsonde, where those so-called gangs or those death squads attacked the people in their homes and massacred over 120 people so far. But the numbers keep going up as they are discovering more bodies, and as people who have been disappeared are being found, and as some are not surviving their wounds. And so Ponsonde was such a place. Right now, the community of Solino, yesterday, this is in Port-au-Prince itself, in Solino was again attacked. Several homes were burned down, were destroyed by none other than the group under Jimmy Barbecue Cherisier of Vincent. People were killed. There is a policeman who lived in the neighborhood who was killed also. They called him Ralph, Commander Ralph. He was killed because he was defending his community from these attacks. And so he was killed there. In several other places, such as Cité Soleil, you also have communities of Cafoufeuille, of Canapé Vert, in different areas of Haiti, different neighborhoods, particularly the ones that are reputed where the working class people live and are reputed to be Lavalas. They are there. The killings are taking place and are continuing against them. Now, you have one thing I wanted to mention. The big news was that Jimmy Barbecue Cherisier, about maybe 2-3 weeks ago, claimed that in a broadcast, he videotaped himself saying that he was at the US Embassy, and he described how he was picked up by a US Embassy vehicle, taken to the embassy for a meeting. And they had a meeting with him and they brought him back. Now, this is a man who's been denounced by the United Nations and condemned for participating in the La Saline massacre, condemned also more recently by the Treasury Department of the US which issued sanctions against him. And I'm talking, this is about maybe 2-3 months ago, in addition to other things by the UN as well. He's a man with a standing with at least 2 or 3 arrest warrants from Haitian judges. And here he is going to the embassy, sitting down, talking to embassy officials, coming out and bragging about it, bragging about him having his passport so that he can leave the country anytime he wants to, and kind of using that as a way to boast of his international support. Then later on, the US ambassador was interviewed by one of the radio stations, prominent radio stations in Haiti, Radio Metropole. And they interviewed him, and he didn't deny it, nor did he confirm it. He kind of played around, and he said, well, we entertain communication with all these gangs. And so this was big news by many in Haiti who just had refused to believe that there could be this kind of double speak. On the one hand, you have them mobilizing, well, we have to do this to the gangs and we need these forces. And by the way, the forces from Kenya are there. I believe they've been joined by maybe 24 from Jamaica, if I may be mistaken, but there is a lot of press around it. But it has not made no difference whatsoever, because it seems to most Haitians, the so-called gangs, the death squads are being emboldened and are carrying out actions, atrocities in broad daylight and not being unafraid. And it appears that the prime minister, the current prime minister, is being denounced a lot throughout Haiti for not taking any action to stop this. So I'll stop right here. I don't want to go over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Pierre. And after Professor Horne speaks, we'll have a question and answer session. But I wanted to acknowledge the presence of a couple of people in the audience. Pierre referred to Sister Malene Alain, who has been championing the cause of Haitian refugees in Jamaica. And from what I've been hearing from my friends in Jamaica, she's doing tremendous work in Jamaica, and I'm very happy that she is here with us this evening. Also, James Finesse, as I indicated before, from Bonaire is here. Charlene Wilkinson from Guyana, also working with Haitian refugees. We have Professor Hilborn Watson of Barbados. I just wanted to acknowledge, just make one point before we introduce Professor Horne, a statement made by Pierre about gangs. And I found it very curious and interesting last week that in reading the newspaper, I saw that the US ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago, Candace Bond, was addressing young people at the YTC, Youth Training Center. This is where our young criminals are. So I was surprised that the US ambassador will give so much attention to going to the YTC. You know, and from what we know, Haiti is not the only place that had gangs, the Tonton Macoute. Grenada had the Mongoose gang, right? Which brutalized people like Maurice Bishop and so on. And in Guyana, you had a similar situation on the Barbuda. So that is something that we could keep in mind as we move on. But our next speaker, Professor Horne, outstanding academic. In keeping with what I mentioned earlier about doing nothing, I remembered I was in a group and we discussed inviting Professor Horne to address the group. And one of our so-called Marxist brothers said, Horne is an apologist for the Soviet Union, therefore we should. But the point is, we ended up doing nothing. And that they didn't want to do anything. So all kinds of reasons came up as to why you can do nothing. But to give you a brief history of my encounter with my first introduction to Professor Horne, I had a couple bookstores in Atlanta. And at the time, the rage in so-called black politics was Cornel West. Not one of my favorite personalities. And so every person who politically inclined who came to the store would ask you for Cornel West book. So those days, you had, this is the 90s, you had sales rep used to come and bring books. So the guy brought this book, the sales rep, a white sales rep. And he said, I have a book, and we'll do it, some guy called Horne. And it's about the Caribbean. I know you from the Caribbean. It was a book on Guyana, right? Cold War in a hot zone. After reviewing that book, every time someone came to the store for a Cornel West book, I said, read this guy. That's what you really need to. And so I've always admired his work, how prolific he was, and his consistency as an editor. So without much further comment, and as I said, that we hope to invite him in the not too distant future to visit Trinidad to be one of our speakers at the George Weeks Lecture. But we'll talk about that later. But to introduce him, is one of his, I have to say, his fans. Because every time, since I met Corey, he's been talking about Professor Horne. So I wanted Corey Jiggs, an independent researcher and activist, to introduce Professor Horne today. So further comment, I can call him.
Good evening. It is my privilege to introduce to you Professor Gerald Horne. He's a historian who holds the John J. and Rebecca Moore's Chair of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston in Texas. He's engaged in social and cultural analysis of race and class and race history. His research focuses on issues of racism in a variety of relations involving labor, politics, civil rights, international relations, and war. Professor Horne is the author of more than 30 books. Yeah, 30 books. He writes as he breathes. And more than 100 scholarly articles and reviews, including the aforementioned Cold War in a Hot Zone, the United States confronts labor and independence struggles in the British West Indies, From the Barrel of a Gun, which incidentally is the book that introduced me to Professor Horne. Counter-Revolution of 1776, Confronting Black Jacobins, the Bittersweet Science, and for the record, Professor Horne, I am a huge fan of Jack Johnson, largely because of his defiance, particularly the time he was living in as a boxer. And he reminds me in many ways of another fan of mine, who you also speak a lot about, Paul Robeson. So without further ado, I give the floor to Professor Gerald Horne. Professor Horne.
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. I'm highly appreciative, and thank you for those generous introductions as well. Let me cut to the chase. I think it's fair to say that all within range of my voice owe an enormous debt of gratitude to Haiti, the Haitian Revolution more specifically, because when its triumph in 1804, it led to a general crisis of the entire slave system in the Americas and in the Caribbean that could only be resolved with its collapse, which it began to do, as you know, in 1807 with London circumscribing the African slave trade and moving on to abolition in the so-called British Empire in the 1830s, and finally to the overthrow of the hated slave system in North America in 1865, followed by the overthrow of the system in Cuba and then Brazil in 1888. And so there is a reason why Haiti has been treated so atrociously, so shabbily today, because the exploitative class, the oppressor class, have memories like that of elephants. Even though we sometimes forget our history, they do not forget. And they want to punish Haiti forevermore for having the gumption to overthrow this system of profit generation known as enslavement, particularly of Africans. And usually in remarks like this, there is a lead up where I conclude with recommendations, but let me put my recommendations at the beginning and then reiterate them at the end. The recommendation being that we should encourage our organizations to engage in picketing of the U.S. Embassy in your nations, of the U.S. consulates in your nations, particularly focused on the horrific policies coming out of Washington with regard to Haiti, particularly since there will be elections in this country in a few days. And you should not be surprised if a man who even fellow members of the US ruling class deemed to be a fascist, speaking of Donald J. Trump, do not be surprised if he returns to power with regard to this November 2024 election. This will be even more disgraceful in light of the fact that just a few weeks ago, in the midst of the only presidential debate that occurred, he captured headlines by castigating the migrants from Haiti who have settled in the United States, charging that they are eating cats and dogs of their fellow denizens, in this case of Ohio. Recall that during his ill-fated tenure as president from 2017 to 2021, that Haiti was one of the nations he referred to as a so-called S-hole nation, S standing for S-H-I-T nations. You may want to ask, why is the chief executive in the White House spending so much time and energy denouncing this small Caribbean nation? And I dare say that even though Mr. Trump is not known for his memory or his knowledge of history, somehow he has imbibed and ingested the mother's milk of the US ruling elite, which is to be hostile to Haiti. Therefore, do not be surprised that if Mr. Trump follows through on his promises, that the immigration status of up to 300,000 Haitians now living in North America, now living in the United States, will be revoked. Technically, it's referred to as a temporary protective status, and that they will be sent back to the island. They will be sent back to an uncertain fate because of the disgraceful policies pursued in the White House. You may want to ask yourself as well, why, as we speak, is the Dominican Republic seeking to expel 10,000 Haitians weekly? Why is it that in the first half of 2024, approximately 60,000 Haitians have been deported from the DR, and that's a conservative estimate? Why are perhaps upwards of hundreds of thousands slated to be deported annually, double the number from 2023? Why is there what is described as hate speech against Haitians in the DR, not unlike the aforementioned hate speech spewing from the twisted mouth of Mr. Trump? And I need not remind this audience that oftentimes hate speech is followed by homicide on a mass basis. Going back into history, following the Haitian Revolution of 1804, you may want to ask yourself, why did the United States find it necessary to occupy Haiti militarily for almost 2 decades, concluding in 1934? And of course, it all comes back to the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804, which once again ignited a general crisis of the entire slave system, including in North America, including in the erstwhile British Empire. You should know that abolitionist Haiti, at that point, at the height of the unlimited African slave trade, had a navy which sought to bar slave ships from landing in neighboring Cuba and dislodging enslaved Africans. You should know that abolitionist Haiti tried to establish a kind of diplomatic alliance globally to circumscribe the African slave trade. It was not unsuccessful in that regard. And one of his chief allies, you should know, of course, was Mexico, which under a president of African descent, speaking of Vicente Guerrero, in 1829, moved to abolish enslavement of Africans, not least because of this aforementioned alliance with Haiti. Of course, we also know that the place where I'm now sitting, speaking of the former Mexican province of Tejas or Texas, would not accept that decree from the first Black president of Mexico, speaking of Vicente Guerrero, and the settlers, the so-called Anglo-American settlers in Tejas, then seceded from Mexico, establishing an independent state, the Republic of Texas, and then ostentatiously named two of the major cities after themselves, speaking of Sam Houston, Houston, Texas, speaking of Stephen F. Austin, Austin, Texas. And during its reign as an independent state from approximately 1836 to 1845, it was challenging the United States as a champion and captain of the African slave trade. And once again, it was Haiti which sought to broker a global alliance to force Texas out of this odious commerce, out of this dirty business, which to a degree, Haiti was successful in doing so because unable to stand the pressure, the independent state of Texas then joined the United States of America in 1845, where it has been ever since. But as noted, the exploiting class has a long memory. And so what happens is that they struck back at Haiti with a vengeance. As noted in the book that I wrote a few years ago, Confronting Black Jacobins, United States, the Haitian Revolution, and the Origins of the Dominican Republic, in one of the more successful and early episodes of U.S. covert action preceding the formation of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, which I dare say is quite active in your countries as we speak. But before the formation of the U.S. CIA post-World War II, post-1945, an early success took place approximately a century earlier when the leaders of what became the Dominican Republic were enticed and encouraged by Washington to break away from Haiti. Recall that the two parts of the island that we call Hispaniola had been consolidated in the early 1820s, but approximately 2 decades later, one half, speaking of the eastern half of the island, was sliced away from rule by Haiti, which of course led to endless conflict between Haiti and the DR, which of course was part of the purpose of Washington's covert action in the first instance. But being high-minded, the leaders of Haiti, when the US Civil War erupted in 1861, did not necessarily hold a grudge against Washington. And at a time when the US government was on the verge of being overthrown by slave owners, one of the few nations that the North, the government of Abraham Lincoln, could rely upon was, of course, Haiti. Certainly, he could not rely upon Cuba, then languishing under not only colonial rule, but rule by enslavers. He could hardly rely upon the so-called British Caribbean. In a rather cynical manner, there were many elites in London who took the position, at least metaphorically, that they loved the United States so much they prefer to see two of them. That is to say, a United States of America and a Confederate States of America. They, of course, could not rely upon France and Martinique and Guadeloupe. And by the way, I will be spreading this news that you have shared about Bonaire and Barbuda to audiences far and wide. So thank you for that news. In any case, because of the assistance from Haiti between 1861 and 1865 during the US Civil War, we saw the effective overthrow of enslavement, which of course was in many ways a follow-on to Haiti's policy, which in the prelude to civil war was implicated in aiding revolts of the enslaved, not only in Barbados, but especially in the United States of America. One of the most significant revolts taking place in the early 1820s in South Carolina, spearheaded by the seafarer known as Denmark Vesey. His plan was not only to overthrow slavery, but then to sell with the formerly enslaved to freedom in Haiti itself. I will conclude by seeking to link the fates of the United States, at least the poor, exploited, and oppressed of the United States, with that of Haiti. Some of you may be familiar with this chamber of horrors, this document of horrors known as Project 2025, which is a blueprint for what the ultra-right, what could fairly be called the fascist right, intends. It's fair to say that the fascist right intends a dire fate, not only for people like me, but for people like yourselves as well. I'll conclude by saying that the architect of Project 2025, Kevin Roberts, wrote a doctoral dissertation about 2 decades ago, where he sought to link the Haitian Revolution with the revolt spearheaded in Virginia in 1831 by the enslaved African preacher by the name of Nat Turner. I think that if you digest that particular factoid, you'll get an idea of what may be in store for all of us, unless, as one, we rise up and inflict mighty blows on the empire, which once again should commence immediately, if not sooner, with demonstrations at the US embassies in your nations, at the US consulates, and of course, by demonstrating, you will also be demonstrating against the United States Central Intelligence Agency, which, as we speak, I guarantee you, is involved up to its eyeballs in interfering in the internal affairs of sovereign Caribbean states. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Horne, for your contribution. Wonderful contribution as always. And we will go into a question and answer session. But before we do that, I would like to introduce Sister Malene Allen to say a few words, because I think it's important that we hear what she's doing in Jamaica. I did not know what she was doing in Jamaica until I started to inquire about a speaker from Jamaica for this year. So I would like her to say something, and then we can open the question and answers after that. And then we'll have the other messages from the different representatives of Caribbean territories. So Sister Malini Alain, I would like you to share with us so sometime your work in Jamaica with Haitian refugees.
Well, thank you so much for having me and also for this very important platform to discuss, I think, one of the biggest human rights crises to hit the Caribbean region. So at an international and regional scale, what we are seeing is the dehumanization of Haitians in mobility, facilitated by stigmatizing, xenophobic, and hateful rhetoric that basically puts all Haitians at risk of various forms of migration-related abuse and torture as they seek refuge in other countries across the region and in the hemisphere because of what is a catastrophic and devastating crisis in Haiti right now. Because there has been no effective international or otherwise condemnation of what is happening and no decisive action, we see an escalation of the issue in countries such as the Dominican Republic. But this issue is spreading across the Caribbean because states are being allowed to act with impunity. So what we have now is a country like Jamaica, which before was off the radar in terms of the issue of the displacement crisis. But in the past year alone, we've had an increase in significant flows of Haitians seeking refuge in Jamaica, mostly through irregular channels. And what we have in Jamaica is a response. In response, Jamaica has adopted a policy of repression and deterrence involving practices such as criminalization, arbitrary detentions in overwhelmingly deplorable conditions, family separation, and collective expulsion. And so what we have documented is since July 2023 alone, over 170 Haitian migrants and asylum seekers were collectively expelled without an opportunity to communicate with a lawyer, without an opportunity to access the courts, and without an assessment of their exposure to risk of persecution upon return, which is what we call refoulement under international refugee law. There's an aspect of this that is particularly devastating that is developing right now, which is the issue of family separation, whereby Haitians are being collectively expelled, leaving behind children and families without any notification and without an opportunity to say goodbye. And we're also seeing where undocumented Haitians are being automatically detained and their children are being ripped away from them and placed in state care facilities with no communication with their parents. And so we have children languishing in state care facilities for 5 months now with no appropriate communication with their parents. And so what I would say is that unless this underlying rhetoric and policy of dehumanization and, xenophobic rhetoric and hateful speech, until that underlying context of anti-Haitian sentiment is addressed, we will see countries across the region acting in a way that suggests that Haitian lives don't matter, acting with impunity. And so what we're calling for is, a region-wide process of stakeholder engagement to develop a shared understanding of the issue and how we ought to respond to Haitians in mobility, and to catalyze action around a rights-based framework that says that we must act now to protect Haitians in mobility. We must take urgent action to ensure that asylum seekers, pregnant women, children are protected, and we must address the stigmatizing rhetoric that I think puts Haitian lives at risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Malini. Congratulations for your outstanding work in Jamaica. And so now we open the floor for some questions for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to move into the solidarity messages. So if there are any questions, please use the little hand on the screen to ask a question.
Greetings from Belize. I don't have my hand. I don't know how to use my hand. I'll be quick. 2 questions.
Is this Sister Yaya?
Yes, it is, Sister Yaya. I want to hurt my feelings when I say on the flyer or I want to put Belize name as solidarity people. I say, all right. I want to get on a good one at Koya today. Anyways, 2 things I want to ask. First, because we know we're good pan attacking, I would suggest that we set a date for the protesting at U.S. Embassy and U.S. consulates. and that we do it in solidarity together, like set our time frame together and all the way go front of the U.S. Embassy. And then document it, take a picture. In Belize, I've done it twice and it can look for me one time. In Belize, they don't even want you to stand in front of the street. You cannot park in front of the U.S. Embassy. As far as they're concerned, the whole street that for them, and the government of Belize and the people of Belize make them get with it. So, but I want to still do it. Secondly, respect to Sister Malene being here, and Sister Charlene from Guyana, and Sister, I don't remember when it was, Sister Charlene notified me of a crisis Sister Malene was in, and I recognized even more so how dangerous it is to be in solidarity with their Haitian sisters and brothers. So when Sister Malene is down there at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning by herself, no water, by herself, like there has to be a way where when one of us is doing something on the ground, that they can alert everybody that there's a crisis going on and that we have something in place to help them. So that's my offer. Solidarity forever.
Thank you, sister. Any other question? No questions for Professor Horne?
Hi, good evening. I have a question.
Yeah, who am I speaking with? It? Identify yourself, please.
Hi, good evening, Nathan Prince. University of Guyana African Culture Association.
Okay, Mr. Prince, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. So the first speaker mentioned a similar situation happening in Dominican Republic. So I would just like for you to comment on that because I would believe Dominican Republic is a much younger country than Haiti. So I'd like to know what was the motive behind that. Because thinking about it now, in terms of like the race population in the Dominican Republic, most of it is like mixed. So it kind of makes sense now. So yeah, like could you just comment on that in relation to what's happening in Haiti right now?
Yeah. Anyone want to comment?
Yes, I could do a little bit, and I'm sure Professor Horne would be able to. But before I do that, let me pay a special, give special thanks and pay really, I don't know how much I can praise this sister enough, and this is Margaret Prescott. And she's been tremendous. She's a member of the Global Women's Strike, and she's been phenomenal in the work that she has done with Haiti. And I mention her particularly because as a reporter, she has tons of documentation on the political situation. She's been covering it way before the coup d'etat over 20 years ago. And she has a lot of documentation on her show, radio show, Sojourner Truth. And also people can look at the Real News Network. Just go Margaret Prescott, Special Massacres in Haiti, Real News Network, and you will be getting that information. So both Sojourner Truth on KPFK radio station and also for the video on interviews with victims of the death squads and her own analysis of that, having gone there so many times. It will be a tremendous opportunity for people to be very familiar with the horrors that are taking place in Haiti. So thank you very much, Margaret. I don't know if she's here, but sending her greetings and much love. And in terms of your question regarding the Dominican Republic, the Dominican Republic, as President Aristide had said, the people of Haiti and the Dominican Republic are two wings of the same bird. And so as far as people are concerned, we have no issues with each other. However, the elite of these two countries try at different times. The elite also, they get together, the Haitian elite and the Dominican Republic elite, they get together very well. But they always try to foment animosity between the people forced the people of the Dominican Republic to be hateful towards Haitians. And it's a way to, because the economic situation there, the socioeconomic situations and what have you, it's terrible for the people of the DR, even though they are much better shape than in Haiti, but it's terrible because many times they have to flee the country as well. But in order for them to maintain, they have to make the people there feel that they are superior to Haitians. The same game that the US plays with racism in the US, and that same game is played in South America and what have you, or making people feel that they are superior to Black folks or to indigenous people. And so that's what is going on. And so under Trujillo, and I'll be trying to say this very fast, under the old dictator, Rafael Leonidas Trujillo y Molina, when the US, a dictator of the US popped up, and they put him in charge of really keeping the people terrorized and subjugated. And so one of the things that he did was create this anti-African, anti-Haitianism. He called it anti-Haitianism. And him and Joaquin Balader was his vice president, wrote countless lies and misrepresentations and books to try to force the people of the Dominican Republic to become racist, to the point that they, for the most part, many of them were denying their own African identity. And so, but just to close on that, to conclude, in the 60s, at different times in our histories, as Professor Horne mentioned, Haiti did help the Dominican Republic get rid of slavery and stand up against Spain, but it was always against a tiny ruling elite that saw themselves as being of Castilian descent, meaning very elitist, aristocratic, from the very racist King of Spain kind of line. And so they were promoting that as if they are descendants, as if all Dominicans are from this. And so it was this type of dynamics that they were imposing, those lies they were imposing on the people of the Dominican Republic. During the 60s, and at different times, but let me take the 60s, and 70s, there was a stronger movement of the people. The popular movement of the DR was very strong. And that's when the US invaded the DR to destroy that movement. And as a result, we are looking at the 80s and the 90s where this movement received a serious setback. And right now what we are seeing has been a steady rise in the dominance, really, of more fascist, of a more fascist environment and government. But the people themselves, among themselves, even when the Dominican Republic in 1937 had massacred close to 30,000 Haitians on the border using racism, but it was the military in the Dominican Republic that dressed in civilian clothes and tried to pretend that they were civilians, but it was organized by Trujillo in collaboration, it's been stated by a number of people, with the US, with the support of the US, pushing that and using racism and dividing the people. So I hope maybe Professor Horne can help me on that as well, to clear that up.
Well, just a footnote on that very enlightening exposition on your part. The DR, the Dominican Republic, is a unique country in world history. It's one of the few countries that won its independence, so-called, with a rebellion against a nation of Black people. Speaking of the secession from Haiti in 1844. And then a few decades later, it was one of the few nations to invite colonialism. That is to say, in order to combat their so-called foe across the border in Haiti, they invited the Spanish to return as colonizers. That is to say, the elite invited the Spanish as colonizers to return. And then finally, since all of you are online, I think that you may want to call up an image of the baseball player from the DR, Sammy Sosa, call up an image of him in 1995, for example, and an image of him in 2024 or 2020, you will see that over that period, he drained somehow the melanin from his face, which is an example of something that should concern us all. That is to say that anti-Blackness has been an emblem of this hemisphere for centuries. And when we let this toxin spread, as it is now spreading in North America and in the DR, inevitably it will impact us all, no matter where we may live. Hence, this very dispiriting news about events in Bonaire, about events in Barbuda. And if we're not careful, that kind of dispiriting news will arrive sooner rather than later in Jamaica, in Belize, in Trinidad, in Guyana.
Professor Horne is already here. Well, it's already here. Skin lightening. You want to make a comment? Yeah. You want to ask a question?
Sala Kamara from Trinidad. I would just want to first compliment the presenters and what was said. I have an interest in the movement in Haiti, especially the Lavalas movement or the party, which presented the greatest threat to the system and which was eventually made illegal as a party. But I would want to find out, in terms of the current time, what is the status of the Lavalas party in terms of what is taking place in Haiti?
Yes, Lavalas is a party that was founded by, I would say, it's from the people of Haiti. And it's not something that somebody dreamed of in their homes and imposed it on people. It came from the people themselves, from their tradition of struggle. And the spokesperson for Lavalas, the man who symbolizes who's the spokesperson, is President Aristide. And he is the national leader of the Famille Lavalas political organization. That's the full name. And Lavalas is also organized from the bottom up, from every, what we call bitation. Bitation, like the smallest community units, in a particular area. And from the smallest bitation all the way at the national level, where there is an executive committee headed by Dr. Maurice Narcisse. And Lavalas has been attacked repeatedly by all the forces of repression in Haiti, particularly the elite, because Lavalas has embodied a program to rebuild Haiti, to ending corruption, to make the business elite pay their taxes, which the taxes, they will collect taxes from the population, sales tax and what have you, and they keep it. They keep it as their money. And the previous regimes used to go along with that as long as the officials got their cut and what have you. So everybody was, and the masses who were paying their taxes were not getting any services. So when in 1990-91, President Aristide came to power, he said, no more of this, and started attacking the corruption, started demanding that those business elites pay and turn over the taxes. For example, the electric company was owned by the Haitian government, and these people would never pay their bills. And so they demanded that they pay their bills. I believe that the US Embassy was among those who never paid its bills, from what I've heard from different sources. And so they were made to pay their electric bills as well. So it's a movement of the people, and it has been severely attacked Many of the leaders have been assassinated, have been disappeared, have been killed, but Lavalas, when President Aristide returned to Haiti in 2011, it was never destroyed. It remained with the people, and it has been always reconstituting itself. So fast forwarding to what's been happening, Lavalas has proposed in November 2018 a coming together of the Haitian families, saying let's let bygones be bygones. Those of you who had participated in the coup and what have you, let's all sit down together to save the nation. And they put together a program, an initiative called the Formation of a Public Safety Government. And that meant because at the time the president who was assassinated, Jovenel Moïse, was in office, and he was just a scoundrel, corrupt individual, killings were taking place, assassinations. So Lavalas said, and corruption, the law, let's have a coming together where the communities would designate competent, honest people who would be participating in those competent, honest people would take charge of the various ministries to provide services to the population. Teachers were not being paid. Let's have some competent people take over the Ministry of Education and start paying the teachers, investing, taking the money and doing, and for the various ministries. And so this organizing galvanized so many people that in 2022, people came together and formed and met at the Montana Hotel to come and sign hundreds of organizations. And that started it. But the US came in and using its power and influence with some people who were its lackeys, tried to take over that whole process and create all kinds of shenanigans within it to destroy it. So what we have now as the transition government, it came from this initiative by the Famille Lavalas political organization, even though the US fought against it tooth and nail, but eventually Lavalas kept organizing and it became the transition, it was accepted as a blueprint for the transition government, which the US again imposed a lot of its lackeys in it and trying to prevent it from accomplishing the task that it was supposed to accomplish. So now that's the ongoing struggle. So people in Lavalas are not only in the streets trying to demonstrate, organizing smaller committees, neighborhood committees, and standing strong against those gangs who are killing people, but also fighting it out at the negotiating table in the meetings of the transition government to make sure that the voices of the people are being heard and are being listened to, and we are trying to move the dialogue and move the country forward towards a path for liberation, for national liberation.
Yeah. I see Danuta Radzik has a question. Very happy to have Danuta, outstanding activist from Guyana.
Yes,
Comrade?
thank you very much. Yes, I'm from the Haiti Support Group of Guyana. And I think, Pierre, you kind of answered one of the questions I was going to ask. And that had to do with what exactly is happening right now in Haiti. Because my understanding is that I read in, some news report that in fact the chairmanship or something of the transitional council or the government councils has now passed to Lavalas. I am not sure about that. So it would be good to confirm that. And I'm happy to hear you say that, they are struggling, continue to struggle to find, some way forward for Haiti in a situation which is getting worse and worse. And as you say, the paramilitary death squads seem to be gaining more and more ground. And what we're also hearing internationally and from the US and the core group is that they want to increase the number of Haitian police numbers to go to Haiti. And it's very clear now that that force, that invasionary force, has completely failed to deal with the security situation in Haiti, and adding more of such forces obviously is not a solution. So you know, it's still a very difficult predicament that Haiti is in, and you know, of course, we're just you know, so sad to hear of all that is happening there. But coming back to the thing about the protests against outside U.S. embassies and consulates, and yeah, I have no problem with that. I will support that. But I think we also we as Caribbean people have to have our governments accountable to us, and our governments in the Caribbean accountable to what is happening in Haiti right now. Because when that whole transitional council was set up, remember, it was the CARICOM leaders who led this, or they were the face of it, but we knew that the powers behind this were United States of America and France and that core group and Canada, etc. But so for example, all the people who were to sit on the transitional council had to sign a document before they sat there and they could sit on this transitional council. They had to agree for the forces, for international invasion forces, which then became Kenyan, to come into the country. Now that was an imposition, and it's obviously not working. And we have to keep have our governments accountable to what they are doing. And since that has failed, I think we also have to have some kind of plan as to how we put pressure on our governments to find solutions, you know, and to address the problems which are happening, including, and you know, at the top of the list also for us has to be what is happening in Jamaica that Malini spoke about. It happened in Guyana. You know, visas are being required for Haitians, even though they are Caribbean citizens, and it is against the revised Treaty of Chagaramas that there should be free movement of Caribbean people. And these are people who, you know, are fleeing a terrible situation that is happening in a Caribbean country, in our sister Caribbean country, you know. So, you know, I think it has to be a priority. And on the question of DR, I remember that was how I got really kind of involved in the Haiti, in you know, supporting Haiti and in solidarity with Haiti. It was because, I don't know, what was it, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, or even longer, when the Dominican Republic had this campaign which they were going to send back Haitians born, people of Haitian descent born in the DR back to Haiti, even though they had lived there for years, had children there, etc. And there was a, you know, a collective Caribbean petition that was done, that was signed by thousands and thousands of Caribbean, you know, people, a few thousand at least, you know, throughout the Caribbean. And it was effective because DR is now doing this again. And once again, we did this before. We, you know, it was both a PR campaign and, you know, signing this. And I think that is what we need, some kind of campaign on those issues, but directed not only at United States of America, but directed at our Caribbean leaders to make them accountable to us. Thank you.
All right, Danusa, thank you very much.
Indeed. There was a question about Lavalas. Yes, the Lavalas representative now, because it's a presidential council of nine members, 7 who are voting members and 2 who are observers. So for me, Lavalas representative right now, Leslie Voltaire, is part of it. And let me say this. The decision for Lavalas to participate in this came from the masses of the people of Haiti. And even though the US, friends, and I'm glad that you mentioned the core group. For people who don't know, they are a group of 9 international entities, 5 countries, US, France, Canada, Brazil, Spain, and Germany. I think that's 6. And then you have the UN representative of the European Union, and the OAS representative, 9 of them. They were formed unofficially in Canada in 2003 to plot the coup d'etat against President Aristide and plot the subsequent occupation of Haiti to this present day. They are the ones who make the day-to-day decisions. So the Famille Lavalas, as an organization, it was the grassroots movement of Famille Lavalas who said, no, you have to be there. No matter what conditions that they try to impose so as to discourage us, so that on a principal position, we would say, no, we have to carry the fight at the negotiating table and push the demands and fight and take the fight there as well. And so that's why Famille Lavalas is there. Now, the thing I want to let you know is that the US imposed the current prime minister, a man by the name of Gary Coney. Gary Coney was like, he is a protege of Bill Clinton, and he worked with Bill Clinton, and he was also prime minister under the corrupt Martelly regime. And there is a judge in Haiti that had put, that named him and actually in a case regarding corruption involving the monies of the Petro-Caribe funds and the funds for the earthquake, all of that scandal. So at the time when the US wanted to impose him, they had another judge nullify that order within a week so that he could be imposed as the new prime minister in Haiti. So from what it's been big news in Haiti that the Lavalas representative, Leslie Voltaire, has stated, has been very displeased with the performance of this fellow for the past 4 months, because as you mentioned, the political violence is sky high. Nothing is being done, nothing is being taken care of. For example, there is the Lavalas Minister of Public Works who had started cleaning up the filth, the filthy streets, the destroyed streets of Port-au-Prince and other communities. Well, this prime minister actually blocked him and had the equipment of the public works shifted to the newly constituted Haitian army and then blocked funds so that the work could be stopped. So basically, your places where these death squads are active, you are seeing this prime minister not taking any leadership role to be of support to the population. What the population is doing, they are relying on their own strength, on their own selves, on rocks, bottles, machetes, sticks, and together with local honest policemen and policewomen who live in their neighborhoods. Then they've tried to form citizens brigade or self-defense brigades to fight off those death squads, sometimes successfully, sometimes they get the worst of it, but it's a struggle that's being carried out. And this struggle is being fought too at the level of the presidential council, at the level of the government. So I'll stop right here.
We will end this part, the question session, and we'll move on to the solidarity message. I don't know if Professor Horne wanted to say anything.
Sorry, there's a question. There's a question in the chat.
This is a little bit the last question because
I don't know if it's yeah, it's been addressed.
Okay, so
do you see? Yeah.
Okay, let that person ask a question.
Are you seeing it?
No, I'm not seeing it from my end.
Ryan Napoli.
Okay, Ryan Napoli, I understand you have a question. Okay, Ryan is not asking his question, so we can move on.
I still think it's an important question,
Yeah,
Akko.
I will read his question because I think it's an important
Yes,
question.
thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
go ahead, read the question then. I'm not seeing it. So.
Do you see a connection between the uprising in Martinique and Guadeloupe and the crisis in Haiti and the overall crisis of US and Western imperialism? Do we see a correlation between what's going on in Martinique and Guadeloupe with what's going on in Haiti?
Professor Horne?
Well, I'll defer to Pierre, but I'll begin by saying that I do. In fact, your audience, I'm sure, recognizes that in light of the reputational damage that U.S. imperialism is suffering in West Asia, Israel-Palestine, in light of the military debacle in Ukraine, in light of the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, which rather slyly laid out an entire architecture for a supplanting of the International Monetary Fund in particular, and everything in the financial world up to accounting standards, while purporting not to do so. And this also presents a very stiff challenge to the dominance of the US dollar. And so I think that given this crisis, not only of US imperialism, but North Atlantic imperialism, including the erstwhile European colonial powers led by Britain and France, who left their imprint in this hemisphere, that this crisis, inevitably, it seems to me, will have reverberations in the Caribbean. In that context, I would say that I'm not necessarily surprised by the news reported from Bonaire with regard to Dutch antics there, because I see that as a kind of heightened neocolonialism. Perhaps, if we're not careful, lapsing into direct colonialism as a result of the crisis now afflicting the North Atlantic countries. And I'm very interested to hear what Pierre has to say as well.
No, I see the connection. It's very strong. We've had a historical connection in our struggle against colonialism, way back to the days of Dessalines, when he sent emissaries to help support the struggles against slavery and colonialism taking place in Guadeloupe and Martinique. And actually, in one of his speeches, Dessalines had mentioned the name of Delgrès, Louis Delgrès, hero of the people of Martinique and Guadeloupe, who Dessalines really loved very much. No, I definitely agree with you, Professor. I think you gave a thorough analysis of it, and I don't have anything else to add.
I just want to, before we move on, Professor Horne made an important statement about the IMF and the fact that there is a possibility that we can recall it. And what is happening in the Caribbean leads in that direction. Now, many may not know that in Trinidad and Tobago, during the Second World War, the largest military base in terms of personnel outside of the US was in Trinidad. The largest was in Trinidad. What we have seen recently also is that the US is building a massive embassy in Port-au-Spain, the capital. I know people are familiar with it. They bought lots of land. It's almost like it's planned to be a military base. And you are seeing these things creeping in slowly, subtly. Additionally, in terms of the IMF, which we are not focusing on, there are 10 countries in the IMF, and recently in Jamaica, the Jamaican Minister of Finance resigned to take up a senior position, I think a vice president of the IMF or the World Bank, one of those institutions. But my friend here, Kamara, wrote a book on this called Foreign Direct Investment and the IMF Threat to Trinidad. And we do not hear a lot of discussion anymore about the role of the IMF. So I want to read a few things here. 10 countries in the Caribbean. Jamaica owes the IMF $797 million, right? Dominican Republic, $682 million. Barbados, $480 million. Haiti, $276. Bahamas, $260. And the Bahamas just sent troops ahead. Suriname, $112 million. Grenada, $35. St. Lucia, $30. The US and St. Vincent, $29 million. Right? This is not a discussion that is taking place. You would not believe from the utterings of Mayor Motley that Barbados would have this kind of debt to the IMF. So there are lots of little things happening that we are not paying attention to very subtly. And it's a very, very dangerous situation. And Professor Horne is correct. We are in a neo-colonial state, but if we are not careful, we can resort to a direct colonial state. So that is something that possibly we could discuss at some point in the future. But time is limited here, and there are some people we have invited here who I would like to make their statement. And one is James Finesse, who has been very active in the struggle in Bonaire, has been in prison so many times, brutalized by the security forces. And he's here to share his solidarity message and to give us an insight into what is happening in Bonaire. Brother James Finesse. James?
Good night. Good afternoon. You hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm in the US at this moment, so I'm gonna try to sound this on. Thank you so much for the possibility to be with you tonight with your group. And the topic is a topic that's very important for the Caribbean, for Haitian people for sure, but for the Caribbean in large and the Americas in the world. It's a privilege to be here today and to share the last developments. As you know, maybe I come a little late, but I hear Professor Horne speak about Bonaire, Labossiere speak about Bonaire. So there was some kind of already leading up, I think, about Bonaire. So I'm happy that I hear our name, because our name was not known in the Caribbean, the world, 3 years ago. But the issue of Bonaire is very important, as Haiti is important, very important. Our issue is very important. I hear so good information tonight about Professor Horne and Mr. Labossiere. So about Bonaire, we are facing a critical challenges on Bonaire, very critical. Since the dissolution of Netherlands Antilles 2010, Bonaire has been faced not neo-colonialism, but direct colonialism, as Mr. worry about is direct colonialism. So this is the situation of Bonaire. We struggle is a minority. We are a minority in the Netherlands, Kingdom of Netherlands. That came with political constriction, and a lot of issues, the economic pressure, loss of cultural autonomy, and the erosion of local identity. True, we are fighting to ensure that our people, our culture, our rights are recognized and protected. We have been on the road for the last 3 years. That's why I think 2 years ago I spoke in the dialogue. But recently we traveled to New York and Geneva, and to put our issues as international states. We have the opportunity to bring our case to the Human Rights Commission. We spoke out against human rights violations that we believe are being carried out by the Dutch government, and we demand accountability. This isn't just Bonaire's fight. It's a fight that resonates across all colonized Caribbean territories, and we are proud to amplify their voices in the struggle of self-determination. We also carried Bonaire's case to Azerbaijan through the Baku Initiative Group, engage with international leaders who understand the need for unity in our pursuit of justice. By building these alliances, we are ensuring that Bonaire and other small territories are not overlooked or forgotten. Our story, our struggle is part of a broader movement for human rights and justice, and we're committed to keeping it at the forefront. Our situation worsened from, as we spoke last time. Last time I remember I mentioned that we were reduced we were being displaced, depopulated on a 40%. The prediction was by 2030 we will be less than one third of the population. But last year, end of last year, the official statistics show that we already become less than 32% on minority on our own island. Yes, 7 years ahead of the predictions that we will be. So it's happening faster. That is even predicted we are disappearing in the Caribbean. I know there was a ballot fired in Bonaire to eliminate us, but you need ballots when you have the law. So direct colonial rule means they put all the laws and policies and to make us disappear. And we're disappearing. That is a statistic. So with that said, I want to say that it's not just a political issue more in Bonaire. It's a humanitarian crisis. In Haiti, we know we have some millions of people, and we see the disaster of how it works when external powers are controlling your local issues. So that is very heavy to share with you today. But in Bonaire also people are dying. They're not dying with bullets because they took the healthcare over. And they're going through very quick. I don't know how many minutes I have, 5 minutes, but I want to mention very quick the healthcare, meaning that they impose a law on us, because we have no power to make our laws. And the law is called euthanasia law. Euthanasia means that you can go to sleep and die. It's not known for us as in the Caribbean of people who are Christian believers. A lot of our islands are Christian believers. They don't believe in euthanasia. That is a European concept, but they impose it on us. And it's being forced on our people. That's why we have deaths every day. This year was a height of 6 people die on a day. That is that type of force from outside to get it. But not only that, we have 2 laws that also they impose on us. Is the law of when you over 70, you will be denied health care when you're over 70. So the doctor, the healthcare system can deny you that health care. So our elderly people are dying. Another law is the law of all our organs belong to the Dutch state. So these are very quick things I want to mention that to understand that we're not just speaking to partners, but it's a very heavy laws that we cannot do nothing against. Okay, that is quickly what's happening. Update I want to say about our islands, how things are going. No, we are under heavy pressure. The tax has been raised dramatically, not 2 times, 3 times, 10 times. Taxes has been raised on our property and land taxes over 500 to 800%. So our people losing the land, losing what they inherited or have to sell or be action. That is a disaster. As I want to say, of course, you won't hear this news because it will be never news in the Caribbean because this is very controlled our island. So we are with few who can speak out, are speaking out and about these issues because we will disappear without nobody ever noticing it. So I know I'm going to have to end because it's not 1 minute, but coming back to the invitation for today, for Haiti. Yes, Haiti is for us, for me, in our view, our heroes of the Caribbean, because they started the whole liberation of the Americas, stopping the slave business that was the scourge for humanity. They are the ones who led the way to free the Americas. And we respect them very much for this. And when we speak in an international arena now, we start saying, I come from Bonaire, we speak papiamento, esse é nosso idioma, papiamento. See, nosso papiamento, and they say papiamento is together with Haitian, the only two official native languages that survive colonization. So I'm proud to say that, mention Haiti name, because we are the ones who maintain our native languages as official languages. But then Haiti is, on the other side, a symbol for the whole Caribbean, the non-independent Caribbean, because half of the Caribbean is still colonized. Right? So Haiti forms for us the people using Haiti to scare the other Caribbean people. That's why they're still not independent. About half the Caribbean is still not independent because Haiti is being used. So I think, as Professor Horne was explaining, yes, it is being used to in that sentence, in the sense for the rest of the Caribbean and the rest of the world, to maintain this Caribbean divided in where I hear someone say the French was here, the British was here. No, they never left. They're here and they're back. In our case, they're more forcefully back because they have us completely direct colonized. So that is, I want to contribute today with this part of Haiti. And we are worried. We're very worried that it is at the stage because it's being used against the rest of the Caribbean. And I think the Caribbean has to realize that we are one Caribbean people. Yes, we all came in the same boats. We're still in the same boat, and Haiti was our forefront fighter for us, for our freedom. So we have to stick together one way or other to get out of this together. We cannot leave it that these colonial powers continue dividing us. So I'm still here. I think I contribute, and if I have questions, I'll be there. I'm there for questions just now. Thank you.
Somebody want to ask a question, but hold on. Okay. I would now call on Brother John Mussington from Barbuda. And it's another very tragic case of the collusion of the government with the foreign powers to steal the lands of these people. So Brother Mussington is the head of the Barbuda Heritage Project. Brother Mussington.
Good night, and thank you, Akko. I bring you greetings tonight, and I really appreciate being a part of this dialogue today. Haiti represents a beacon for the rest of the Caribbean. As the first nation to light that liberation torch, we have always been grateful for that example which they set. Haiti weighs heavy on our hearts in the sense that they have been punished over and over and over in terms of the injustices that are still being meted out on them. I bring you greetings from the tiny island of Barbuda, the twin island state of Antigua and Barbuda. We share your story in terms of injustice and what is happening throughout the Caribbean. We can only describe it as disaster capitalism. These islands we are faced with not only challenges from the wealthy nations in terms of imposing their capitalist ideals and extracting from our resources their wealth, but we also are in a situation where we are faced with disasters. The climate crisis has meant that we are on the forefront. And what has happened in Barbuda in 2017 in the wake of a hurricane, this island, since emancipation in 1834, has been run by our African brothers and sisters using a communal system of land ownership. In other words, every single Barbudan has rights to the land and resources. We do not buy land. Land is not for sale. It is the most equitable form of resource management on this planet Earth. What we are facing today is a situation where the wealth extractors, loving sand, sea, and sunshine. In the past, it was sugarcane, cotton, and all these resources leaving our islands. Today, it is in the form of tourism and luxury real estate. So right now, since 2017, we have faced a situation where our central government administration is doing all in its power to abolish our communal land system so that wealthy millionaires can sell luxury real estate in the form of our sun, sea, and sand and create that sort of market as another means by which wealth is extracted from these parts. So I stand in solidarity with Haiti. I want to refer everyone here to a website, strongercaribbeantogether.org. If you do a search for that website, you will find that for the past 4 or 5 years, we have bound together regions of the Caribbean, Latin America and the Caribbean, Jamaica, Grenada. We have representatives from Haiti as well. I had the pleasure of meeting in Jamaica in July, a brother from Haiti who shared with us his experiences. And the Stronger Caribbean Together network is about countries, these islands, these communities who face the same challenges, which we can basically call neocolonialism. The persons coming back to these parts to extract wealth. And in doing so, we are asked to give up these bits of paradises for their purposes. So that website, Stronger Together Caribbean, it will provide information in terms of what is going on, how we have bound together. It tells our stories. It demonstrates how communities can band together and with the knowledge of what is going on, gain strength in resisting this new onslaught in terms of others trying to take advantage of our situation and extract wealth in another form again. So Haiti represents the first in this region in terms of that resistance. Haiti has been punished over and over again for taking that stand. And as Caribbean people, we have to stand together with our brothers and sisters in Haiti. We have to spread the message of the truth of what is going on there. And we have to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters. So thank you for the opportunity to have this dialogue tonight. And there is strength in knowledge. There's strength in binding together. Once we know what is going on, we stand the better chance of resisting this other form of colonization again. So thank you, Akko, and thank you everyone for listening to me.
I want you to share that Robert De Niro incident in Barbuda in which he was part of the thing to steal the land. You want to share some information on that?
Yes, we got struck by a hurricane. And after that hurricane, we had several wealthy, quote unquote, wealthy investors who turned up on our shoreline, one of which was Robert De Niro. And it's instructive that there's a film that came out recently, Killers of the Flower Moon, and it's the same Robert De Niro who is starring in that picture. When I heard of that movie, I said, okay, he's the right person for that, because he is doing exactly what he did in Barbuda. He's portraying that in that film. And so essentially you have persons like that who would come to Barbuda, claim that they are helping us in terms of that disaster, acquiring land, and they're calling it Paradise Found. That's the name of the scheme. And essentially, it is taking our land, selling it as luxury real estate, and claiming to help us in the process. Now, he's just one of many. There's another company called Discovery Land Company. Now, you know, in the old days, we had a certain person by the name of Don Christopher Columbus, who sailed to these parts and claimed to have discovered our land. Well, there is a company called Discovery Land Company, and that goes all over the world, finding virgin territory in their eyes, with rich resources that have not yet been spoilt, acquiring them by all sorts of means, even to the extent of using hurricane disasters and so on to be able, when people are in shock, to strike their deals in acquiring land and resources. And then they sell them to the millionaires, develop these exclusive residential communities. So like Robert De Niro in his Paradise Found, you also have one called Peace, Love, and Happiness, which is run by a guy by the name of John B. Turbiddy, who has contracted Discovery Land Company to build out these luxury residences. If you need a plot of one of these properties, start off as about 3.5 to 4 million US dollars, some as high as 30, 40 million US dollars for sale from our land, from our resources, from which we get nothing. So that is the story of what is happening in Barbuda. Since 2017, it has escalated. We were devastated by a hurricane, and down swooped these quote unquote investors, supposedly saving the day. But it was just a disguise for getting their hands on our lands and our resources. And that is the story throughout the Caribbean today. Some of these precious areas which we have preserved for posterity. So you look at Grenada, you look at St. Lucia in terms of the Pitons, you look at Jamaica in the Maroon Territory and other areas like that. You look at Belize. Throughout the Caribbean, we're seeing more and more. New Providencia in Colombia, they were struck by a hurricane as well. And the same thing that happened in Barbuda, the same thing is happening there. So there's a pattern, all right? And when we have these shocks, you have persons coming in to take advantage, and then they're discovering our lands again for their benefit. So that is the story of Robert De Niro, Discovery Land Company, Peace, Love, and Happiness. You know, you see these names? That's what's going on in this world in 2024. Okay?
Thank you, brother. Well, I know some people want to ask questions, but Sister Danielle Frederick from Trinidad, another young activist, would like to give a message of solidarity with Haiti. Please come forward. And we're followed by Sister Charlene Wilkinson, and we'll have Professor Hilborn Watson wrap everything up before we hear from Professor Horne and Pierre Labossiere. Go ahead.
Night, everyone. A lot to digest in terms of the information that has been shared tonight. I'll try to be brief. To bring a message of solidarity on behalf of a nation would be honorable, especially to stand in solidarity with a country such as Haiti, who have time and time again demonstrated that size, not might, is not the only factor. My apologies. Let me start again. To bring a message of solidarity on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago to Haiti would be an honor, It would be especially encouraging if a former colony, which is still grappling with the impacts of European discovery, the genocide of natives, and the enslavement of African people, along with the indentering of South Asians, we would stand with the first self-made Black Republic. However, bringing a message on my country's behalf would leave me struggling to find examples of our present or past conduct that demonstrates such a mindset. Instead, I will take a page from Haiti and focus on the people, despite the leadership, and bring a message of solidarity from the ground, from the like-minded people of this country who are committed to self-determination and working out a better way than what was imposed. From the resistance workers, the resistance academics, the resistance minded in Trinidad and Tobago, we extend solidarity to like-minded brothers and sisters in Haiti. We stand in solidarity with the people of Haiti who have demonstrated that size of might is not the only factor when considering one's odds in a battle, while underscoring that the drive and commitment to freedom and self-determination plays a larger role in the outcome. In spite of puppet leadership and external interference, the spirit of resistance to hegemony remains as strong now as it was 200 years ago. We stand with Dr. Bertrude Albert and the people building the canals which bring consistent, reliable water to the Haitian farmers, despite the Dominican Republic government's strong-arm tactics and Haitian leadership's inactivity. These canals are fueling the resurgence of Haitian rice, community building, and confidence in the ability to locally produce food to feed its population. We stand in solidarity with grassroots organizers, liberation-focused academics, and all groups that support the independence of the people and create spaces for resistance conversations in Haiti. For all its challenges, social media has loosened the stranglehold that conventional media had on shaping the narrative of Haiti. It has given voice to Haitians, such as tonight, to correct and counter the selective, mostly erroneous, and always anti-Black narrative around the issues Haiti faced and faces. Although the ability to connect in real time with our brothers and sisters to hear their stories and the solutions they would like us to support them in enacting. We have to acknowledge the role that conventional media has played in contributing to the suffering then and now to the people of Haiti, and the resistance minded in Trinidad and Tobago will also have to demonstrate its solidarity by not letting local media evade accountability and correction when they partake and perpetuate inaccurate and insidious narratives about our brothers and sisters in Haiti. Finally, I take the opportunity to speak to my African and African-descended citizens in Trinidad and Tobago. Haiti stands as a symbol of what the world thinks of our humanity as African people. Only when Haiti is allowed to engage in her right to be self-determined republic, without encumbrances, will it signify that we as Africans are seen as equal to everyone else. Haiti alone can be the litmus for our African humanity, because she alone engaged in the struggle of liberation on her oppressors' terms and won and maintained this way. It is she who has forever been punished because of her will and commitment by her forebearers to liberation, which set off the liberation events and historical losses for the Western powers. Therefore, only through their acknowledgement of those losses and their conference of the spoils of war, which they have withheld for 200 years, would they signify a shift and change in how they view us as Africans and African descendants. And yet again, all our Africans on the continent and the diaspora will benefit from the resilience and resistance of the Haitian people. Let us not delude ourselves about the crime Haiti is being punished for. She's being punished for being Black and not subjugated. There was one thing that Pat Robinson got right about Haiti in her current predicament. There is indeed a pact that demonically hinders Haitian progress. He was wrong about the demons involved and who made the pact.
The only pact that was made and maintained was by colonial powers and her offsprings, who constantly used the demons of white supremacy, white fragility, and notions of entitlement to try and suppress and oppress the people of Haiti. Viva Haiti.
Representing the youth, Daniel Frederick. As we move on, I call on Sister Charlene Wilkinson from Guyana, who works with the Haitian organization in Guyana. Sister Charlene.
Yes, greetings everyone. I kind of like this gathering. And so I am not going to allow the gathering to close tonight without having an action plan for the recommendation that Yaya made about us. When we decide to do something together, it must be together right across the Caribbean at the same time, right? But I don't want to show any cold water and all the glorious statements about revolution. But, you know, I think our history shows that military solutions really never really bring true freedom. So we have to be very careful about that. There are quiet revolutions happening everywhere in the Caribbean, and we are not paying attention to what's happening to us at home. I think Professor Horne spoke about that capture of the media by the powers that be, you know. I also want to thank Professor Horne for reminding us that underneath the revolution is the storytelling, is the telling us, is like sitting together. I don't know if we're all in the room, but sitting together and listening to stories about ourselves told by our own peoples. It's history. He studied history in a university, but the important thing is to bring that story home to our young people. And I am taking advantage of my moment tonight to introduce 3 young people who came on board at my invitation tonight. They are Akeem, Danielle, and Nathan from the African Students, the University of Guyana African Cultural Association. They have honored me by asking me to be their staff advisor. And so I want them to have the same kind of richness I shared when I lived in America and I walked among the African American activists and teachers. And that is what, you know, I always say in Guyana, somebody with my color don't know we Black till we left Guyana. And when we reach America, we just know we Black. And then when you reach to Jamaica, you just know what it means to feel Black. But in America is that idea of storytelling and sitting in rooms on regular basis and listening to us remember that we belong together. You know, even those of us who are Europeans more than the others and who have managed to slip into the camp of the African warrior, as I think, honestly, Danuta and her sister, Vanda, are warriors to be reckoned with. And I don't want us to forget their work in Guyana. So I would like the young people, they don't want to speak. I thought I would ask them to speak, but they can all, I said I would share my 5 minutes with them, but I would like to see them grow that organization in Guyana, not as from a small consciousness of Black youth in Guyana facing trials as Guyanese Africans, but facing trials as Caribbean and African people across the globe. And I want them to feel that solidarity without feeling that their own specific concerns in Guyana would be eroded. And I think what I heard here tonight is a way of binding us together so that we understand our specific issues Yes, when I went to see Killers of the Flower Moon, I was reminded right away by Professor Devonish of what Robert De Niro was doing in Barbuda. I said, look at that. I said, just look at that. This is why I was able to send that article in the chat. But solidarity to the revolution. Yes, yes, yes. But what about the ordinary Haitians who are trampled, the peasants, the people who are, you know, at the bottom of the ladder that the Europeans have created? What about them? When are we going to give them voice? When are we going to listen to those people that Malini has this? Malini sits in the police stations and doesn't move. And I can just imagine what's going on. And thank you, Yaya, for saying that when she's sitting in the police station and doesn't move, the police must know the whole Caribbean watching. We must find a way, very polite. If you want to learn about polite activism, meet UC Guyana. I've never met a man who could look you in the eye and tell you you're doing wrong and make you feel just shame. You know, he doesn't go hysterical on a picket line. Quiet, specific, genuine, speaking to the soul, speaking to the enemy as though you believe they have a soul. You know? So solidarity to Haiti, but more solidarity to the ordinary Haitians who still need a voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you. You've been getting some applause to the sitting audience here from the sitting audience here. There are two people, the Grenada text me saying they were having some problems connecting, and I haven't heard from St. Vincent. So what we will do at this point, before we get a summary from Professor Hilborn Watson, is I would like Dr. Pierre Labossiere to make any closing remarks, and also Professor Horne, and then we just have the final comment by Professor Hilborn Watson.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much. It's quite an inspiring, very inspiring meeting, very inspiring family coming together. And I really, really appreciate it. Love the suggestion about doing something together. And as a co-founder and representative of the Haiti Action Committee, we will take action also in the Bay Area when we have a date set for joint action. So I know the hour is getting late. I don't want to go on too long, but again, I will pass that on, this great meeting, to the sisters and brothers in Haiti who are on the front lines dealing with these ongoing attacks. In addition to the bullets and what have you, they are being starved as well. Because when you look at the statistics, it's the high cost of living and everything else. It's meant to be a weapon to try to starve the majority population. So it's estimated that over 5 million people are in danger of starvation in Haiti because of the actions of the death squads and also all of the conditions imposed by the IMF and the World Bank that is making life so incredibly impossible for the people of Haiti.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor Horne.
Well, I know the you for inviting me, and let me pass the mic on.
Okay, thank you for your profound comment. Professor Watson?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yes. Thank you, Akko, and this has been a very informative and extremely important gathering, Professor Horne and Mr. Labossiere, and of course all the other persons who contributed. Now, what I tried to do is just make some general remarks because it will be it's not possible to summarize what was presented, and that's not what I am about. I want to begin with a very simple proposition, if you will. We live in a world, right? We live in a world in which a phenomenon called global white supremacy developed over a number of centuries. This is a matter that was addressed also by Professor Horne in some of his books that I have looked at quite closely. And it functions as what I call the cultural norm of world order. It is baked into the entire global geopolitical order that racializes everything, and through racialization seeks to dehumanize large numbers. It's amazing to find that we are in the early part of the 21st century, and things that one might have assumed some decades ago would be behind us are right in our faces. We see an intensification of fascist movements in the world. And of course, we have to draw some distinction between a movement and a regime. We wouldn't say today that the US state is organized systematically in a fascist way, but we would say there are fascist movements in the country. Order through international law of an organization, diplomacy, questions about sovereignty, notions about justice and rights and freedom, all tarnished by this particular phenomenon. And it is not by accident, because it operates in what I might call a top-down hegemonic way, through which it is able to not simply to infuse, but to mediate what we do. And when it comes to the question of sovereignty, bearing in mind what the crisis in Haiti today, and I want to touch on that, we notice that, at least from my point of view, that states broadly, national states, use sovereignty fundamentally not to address the fundamental needs of the denizens of people who live under those states, but to protect the same global order of white supremacy that seeks to operate like something that is there but not there, like present absent, so to speak. And in that particular regard, this sovereignty operating through global white supremacy defends the right of exploiters at the expense of exploited people at large. It is not surprising, therefore, to find that in our world today, we have a situation in which fewer than 50 individuals own more than the bottom 50% of humanity. It's a world in which at least 3 to 3.5 billion people own nothing. And in the United States, it's a handful that dominate. You have in the US the top 20% owning more than the bottom 90. Owning about 80%, with the bottom 80%, forced to survive on 10%. And it's called the wealthiest country in the world. But for whom? There's nothing fair or equal in the distribution of wealth. That has never happened in any moment of capitalism. It is only the struggles that are raised from the bottom rather than from the top. The top-down struggles are to maintain some kind of status quo and yield or modify things when they are forced to, but there has never been a capitalist order in which the dominant ruling interests never seek to claw back what they were forced to give up through class struggles in the form of concessions. So it is not surprising that we see today, if I may make some comments here briefly on Haiti, that the crisis gripping Haiti today is a reflection of a deeper kind of global crisis. What we call American hegemony is in deep crisis. It is clear that it will not sustain itself as usual, but I would argue that in the case of Haiti, my view is that the gangs that are waging all kinds of terror at large are not operating independently, that these are working for powerful interests in the country who recognize something, that popular struggles from below force them into a predicament where they're forced then to execute terror, a reign of terror, as it were, against the broad majority of Haitian people. So that when we express solidarity with Haiti, we recognize that we're talking about a society, but that those who carry out all these crimes against humanity through their gangs and so on are not the people with whom we are in solidarity at all, right? So with that, you know, sort of as a context, example, the one was on Jamaica with respect to what the government of Jamaica, you know, has been doing to Haitians. This is not the most unusual thing at all. And yet this CARICOM thing, right, presents itself as having a position on Haiti. But what position? Representing what's interest? Whose interest? Those who govern in those countries are certainly not organized or in an organizational sense looking out for the broad mass of Haitian people who are dehumanized, depressionalized, marginalized, and forced to operate not simply on some so-called margin of subsistence, but to face the most brutal forms of terror, you know, on an everyday basis. And the CARICOM people, the CARICOM leaders, I would say, are not set up to address those fundamental concerns. Now, I recently published an article called The Political Economy of Reparations and the Dialectic of Transnational Capitalism. Came out a few weeks ago in the online version of the Journal Development and Change, having participated last year in September in a workshop in The Hague. And in that particular argument, I set forth a number of points I'll just mention briefly here, that when we talk about reparations, we need to be clear about the agendas. There are not dominant capitalist interests that are interested in promoting reparations. You heard the British say last week that it is not on the agenda of this thing called the Commonwealth, right? Which if it were to disappear tomorrow, there would be very little fundamental change at large, you know, in the world. So I think we have to take into consideration, right, the fact that we are at a turning point. Ecologically, we are at a turning point, right? We know that this, I should say, a tipping point rather than turning point. And we are all, as it were, involved, right? We are all in some ways consumed. But the crisis of US hegemony finds itself being expressed in part in the crisis in Haiti. What is the response of the United States to this phenomenon? If you look at what is being said in this silly season moment of a campaign, an presidential election campaign in the United States, not only do you hear from the fascist movement under a sort of subspawn like Donald Trump, that people are eating the dogs and they're eating the cats and eating the geese and so on. Now, what is that? When you listen to it, an attempt to vilify, to dehumanize, to vulgarize, and essentially in that regard, deny the humanity of Haitian people. But Haitians are just exemplary of this mischief, of this nastiness, of this diatribe that you hear coming out of a fascist movement in this moment where someone is aiming to become president again. But we would see here, as I mentioned, the growing concentration of wealth in a few hands, the denial of possibilities to large numbers of people, and it's global, right? It is global. You look today at the Zionist fascist genocide going on in Palestine, and what do you get from the United States president? I am a Catholic American Zionist. Now, what do you understand about Zionism? For me, there's a synthesis of capitalism, liberalism, and fascism out of which Zionism spawned. And it has to be put in that context. Now, looking at Palestine, occupied Palestine, and looking at this issue, we seem to be on the verge of a regional war, which would not be limited regionally, with the Israelis bombing strategic places in Iran to draw the Iranians out and react in certain ways that they will give them access to more that they can target and destroy. So we are in a global predicament. My sense is that the current crisis then in Haiti signals something about a deepening crisis of the Haitian ruling class that then puts up these forces in the forms of gangs and the people bearing weapons to increasingly terrorize and to put at greater risk the broad mass of the people who are forced to resist in order to find a way to survive. And I would therefore say that if you bear that crisis in mind in Haiti, you have to connect it to the broader crisis of US hegemony. What about the BRICS? What about the emergence of alternatives? What about the fact that if the US GDP stands at about $22 trillion, the People's Republic of China stands at about 17 trillion and growing. Now, I'm not here, my aim is never to get into, to be trapped by what I call this ideological thing, which is what I call the territorial trap of geographical determinism, where you seek to play one country off against another. The globally integrated economy in which we live is way beyond all of that descriptive geographical stuff. And the interconnectedness of interests, that interconnectedness is obvious. Ruling forces in all countries, sooner or later, they may compete in some ways, but they're also closely integrated. And that is part of the threat to this American-dominated order that has no answer to the problems for broad masses of people in this US, where I have lived for 59 years, having left Barbados in 1965 to come study in the United States. I said I wanted to become a professor. I said that when I was in high school, and golly, it worked, right? And I'm now retired 11 years. But I think that we have to be clear that going forward, expressing our solidarity with Haiti, with the Haitian masses of people, and trying to forge some idea of the path forward. A lot has been said here this evening by Professor Horne and by Labossiere and by all the other contributors. I'm very impressed and very delighted that I was invited to participate in this course we've done in so many other instances in the last couple of years here. And it's rewarding, it's uplifting, and I am what I call a dialectical optimist. I don't succumb to pessimism, and I understand that the motion of history is dialectical. Our global reality is very heterogeneous. It is open-ended. We always, through our minds, want to find a sense of order and orderliness in which to represent and communicate. But objectively, that is not how things work, because the dialectical motion reflects the contradictoriness that inheres in social reality, right? So even when we feel despondent and when we feel that we are at our wits' end, there is always reason to be hopeful. And I am hopeful that a brighter future can be achieved. But since we cannot construct the past, and since history does not understand the subjunctive mood, what takes us is the future remains to be made, and it becomes a question of how we combine the various forces for progress to build a future which would have to be viable at this turning point, a post-capitalist future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Watson, your comments, and we'll have final comments by the representative of Blue Edition, to do a vote of thanks on behalf of the both Jegna Institute at Caribbean Dialogue. Mr. Roll Gibbon of the Blue Edition will do the vote. Roll?
Yeah, okay, I'm here. Thank you, Akko. Okay, this has been such a rich experience. I mean, every time you come here, even without the forum, because you're always talking Haiti and you're always talking Caribbean, it's always a learning experience, you know? So we want to say thanks for this interaction tonight. I'm leaving really with a strengthening of the idea of what we are and what we face in the Caribbean. You know, it seems as though whether we are independent, as we call ourselves, or still colonies, or as someone put in the note there, even in the Gullah Islands in the States, we face the same crises. You know, we're all dealing with the same, we're all in the same war, actually. You know? And I'm so happy that Professor Watson at the end of it put it in terms of the dialectic of history. You know, the fact that even though we face all these things, we know that there's an outcome that can be positive. Right? There's always the resistance, and there's always the potential for victory. You know, I know that in Haiti, for instance, Charlene talked about the ordinary people. We at Caribbean Yard Campus support school in Haiti. I mentioned that in our last encounter, school at Basilo, L'Hôpital, right in one of in Port-au-Prince, one of the slum areas. And we support that school, you know, and they're continuing with the work, all right, despite all that is going on. So we have instances like that, right? There's a kind of hope, a kind of resistance. But I think one of the problems that we have, and I was glad for that tonight with Pierre Labossiere, what he said, but I think it's so important for us to get in the Caribbean, in the rest of the Caribbean, to get a clear idea of from Haiti, any solution, any direction to a solution in Haiti, toward a solution, must come from the people of Haiti. You know, and that's the voices that we're not hearing. So I'm glad that Pierre was here tonight and told us about Lavalas. Okay? And we want more of that. We want to be clear. I don't think it's enough for us to just come up with some kind of action. All right? It's got to be consistent, and it's got to be directed by Haiti, right? From the authority of the people of Haiti. So that Lavalas connection, I think, is very important, is what I got from it tonight. The other thing I want to say is that in recognizing that we're all in the same boat, the information that we got from Jamaica, the sister from Jamaica, Balini, and from the brother in Bonaire, that's so important. You know, that information we don't get. And the fact that, you know, we didn't have Martinique with us tonight, I think was an omission. Because Martinique, and we've got to stop thinking about language in the Caribbean as a barrier, right? That is, again, what the colonials have put, how they've divided up the place. It's not a barrier. We must not see it as a barrier. We must see ourselves as making connections whatever way we can, right? If you have to learn the language, right? But there are ways of speaking, right? Despite the differences that there may be among our languages, there are ways of communicating that we have. We have good contacts in Martinique. And what we know about what's happening in Martinique is that, one, it's led by young people. The young people who are leading the resistance in Martinique right now. Two, it's multi-headed. There's no one leader. It's like the Negma War. All right? Like the Negma War of Haiti. Right? So they can't pinpoint one and destroy that person. It's all over the place. Right? When the French are running that way, they're setting fires in in another direction. It's very, very sophisticated and well organized. And thirdly, we know that it has been successful in part, in the sense that the French have backed down. Right? In relation to the immediate issue about, of course, about prices and so on. Right? But there's much further to go, and they're going that way. Right? And as Brother Watson made the point, this is really a tipping point, a global tipping point, okay, in terms of the kind of change that is to happen. But the isolation is not only in terms of language, and I'm not taking up too much time, I hope. The isolation is not only in terms of language, it's also in terms of information.
2 more minutes.
Who's always making that point, all right, about the need for information sharing. This is what we have here. But the brother from Barbuda gave us a very good hint as to what could be done. When he talked about the website that he has, that's called, what is it? StrongerCaribbean.org. I think we should all know that. StrongerCaribbean.org. There's got to be a space where the information that we're seeking can be shared. And they've established that space. Right? And it is the information, it is the knowledge that strengthens us. It's the knowledge that guides us. Okay? And I think that you've got to trust that. And out of that, the action will come. Okay? So I want to say thanks very much. I'm just sharing a few responses, uninvited, but nonetheless, that's what I got from it. I want to say thanks to everyone. Thanks to APCO. Thanks to all the presenters, to you, Pierre, always, giving us the insight into Haiti, to Professor Horne for his getting to the heart of the matter and giving us action that we can do for the information that was shared by Marlene and all the other presenters. And of course, to know that, and there's something with Haiti, yeah? There's almost a sense from our contact with Haiti of a kind of existential isolation, a feeling that Haitians have, that they're alone, that there's nobody, and there's a reality.
Yes.
That nobody will stand up for them.
That's right.
Yeah, they feel very strongly
That's right.
I say it's a kind of existential reality. And so we've got to, it's so important for us to spread through, this network that our brother from Barbuda has, the kinds of consciousness to widen it, right? And to let Haitians know that it's their voice that is important for us. Okay, so thank you all. Thanks for sharing. Good night. Be safe and be strong.
Night.
Good night. Before I go, I want to come back to the actions we will leave here with. So in sharing the labor, respect to the organizers, I'm willing to, for those who are willing, to create a WhatsApp chat group for IT solidarity so we could be in contact with each other. So if Eleni, for example, is in crisis, until we create some type of alert system that everyone would know, for example, Melanie is in crisis. Who do you know in Jamaica at 2 o'clock in the morning who can get to her right away, what we can do? Secondly, give thanks to Brother Gerald Horne. First time I hear about you, brother. I don't know nothing about you. Give thanks to the work, your commitment, the sacrifices, as well as to the other speakers, Brother Pierre. I am in support of the suggestion that you made about going to U.S. territories in our communities. So again, if it's agreed upon, I'm willing to, with the chat group, communicate with each other to set a time. And I agree. Someone also said about holding states accountable. And I also want to caution us on who we're organizing with. We can't, we've talked about this before, looking back at movement work, of organizing with people that we don't know. All our kinfolk aren't our kinfolk, especially when it comes to those with colonial degrees. I agree that we need scholar activists. I agree, but I'm sick and tired of these colonial degrees people who they act bougie, knowing they come from working class Black people and forget who they. I don't want to work with you no. Real talk. I don't beg friend. So I'm really big on working from within African heritage communities from below with credible people with veteran and know say on indeed work for the liberation of African people globally without anybody pay on and that we could trust on. So if I just to be real about that, and we can't keep acting like we're not learning from lessons in the past. We have enough elders here who have witnessed that, who have lived that. And we, the next second, third generation, need to do better instead of just aligning ourselves with people that we don't know. Anyways, remember.
Thank you, Sister Yaya.
Only the people are save the people.
Thank you. We'll continue the discussion. Again, thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Professor Horne, Brother Pierre, and Professor Horne, I'm going to formally write you that letter so you can come spend some time with us in Trinidad if you can make some time for us. Right, so we're working on that as soon as I leave here, and we'll contact you. I see Corey smiling every time I said that. So we want to come have you come down to Trinidad for a few days and we work those details out. Thank you all very much. Charlene, as always, you're inspiration and a fighter. Thanks. And Sister Marlene, I was happy to meet you, even though virtually. And thanks to everyone. And we will continue this this information process of educating people on what is happening on Haiti.
Someone asked if this will be on YouTube. Will it be?
It will be recorded. We don't have a YouTube channel right now, but it could be on YouTube.
Forward it to me. I'll make sure it goes to YouTube.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll do that. Okay. So thank you all very much. And we look forward to the next session.
Night.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All of the people who are save the people.
Night.
Haiti forever.
Yes. Thank you.
Right.
Yes,
Good night.
good night. Good night.
Good night.
Yes.
We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people.